Hi everyone, this is Michael Jacobs. Welcome to another golf show. And I have a cool, interesting little analogy for you today, looking at how a record spins versus how the golf club spins or rotates during your swing. I want you to envision the old school record players, which they're starting to make a comeback, which is great. They sound so much better than iTunes. You hear that little crackling noise when you put the needle on, sounds terrific. So remember that they're predominantly two size records. There was the smaller 45 record and the bigger 78. Well, I think you can see your downswing by looking at these two records and seeing what types of phenomenons happen. I'm going to suggest to you that early on in your downswing, you want it to feel as though it's a small 45 record, and then it starts to grow into a bigger record. Here's what I mean by that. Well, early on in your downswing, it's often talked about, how well some great players lag the club early on in the downswing, and they stop the club, so to speak, from moving out too soon. And that word stop is interesting because for a long time, an early golf research at university showed that it was a conscious stopping motion. That early on in the downswing, the golfer should try to retard the outward movement of the club or put some negative torque into it. But that was looking at it as if the record or the way that the club was swinging around never changed size. So if I have something like this record here, and it stays the same size as it's spinning around, and I want to slow down the angular velocity of the record, I would have to put some type of torque or stop it from moving around. What we found is that you want to see your golf swing as a record that's continually growing. So when you start your downswing and you're trying to keep the club close to you, preserve some lag, and have that club have very low resistance, just like all the great players in the history of the game have done, you want to see it as a small record that once it starts to move around, then starts to grow out and become a bigger record. And I want you to focus in on my alpha beta gamma ball and watch how it would be spinning around early in the downswing around a small record, and then as it moves out, it would start to then take the track of a much bigger record. And that is something you want to have happen in your downswing, but you don't want to have it happen too soon. And the well-timed golfers allow that club to move out at the same time. Now, when you look at the actions of a golfer and you look at the predominant action, which is forcing the club, and how changing the direction of the force is a predominant driver of the golf club, and you're also looking at torquing the club, how the golfer actually twists on it, we find that it's real helpful to intertwine all the relationships of how the club and hands move out. That factors into what's taking place. So when you start your downswing and this ball of the club is moving close to you, you'll notice that the grip moves pretty wide. And then to get this thing to move out and start to take energy out of me, I have to start curving at the grip more. And that's generally what you'll see in the best players. And when the club moves out, it'll begin to slow the hands down and transfer the energy to the club. And that's something you want to have happen. And I think over the years, a mistake that has been made is that people think they want to preserve the lag forever. And what they end up doing is they make that small 45 record, and then they continue to try to do that. And then to make the big record at the end, they have to do all kinds of crazy stuff to get the club out. And that's when their body starts to break down and you start to see all the things that you don't want to see. So I think it's important for golfers to understand that lag is important, but it's predominantly driven by the shape at which you move your hands and the shape at which this orange ball curves around. And picture like it's a small record early on and then grows out to a big record down by impact. And I think you'll start to see yourself hit some better shots. What it'll do then, it'll help control the low point of the swing much better when you allow that club to move out consistently and you're able to prepare for it. Now this one always throws a little wrinkle into people, and that's with a driver or a longer club, this becomes even more interesting. And what I mean by that is the longer the club, the longer it takes for that bigger record to start to happen. So you might have to prepare yourself to do things earlier. In short game shots and stuff, it's helpful to feel like as you make your backswing, you're focusing in on where that orange ball would be, and then coming into impact, you want that ball to make an outward movement as your hands move in. And that's a key move. So understanding the relationship between these two things, seeing it as a record, could help your golf game.